Hey, hey, hey. Welcome into another episode number 4, Don't Spill the Mixie podcast, alongside my co-host Matt Vieneman. I'm Mark Redford. Matt, what are we drinking in Vegas?
In Vegas, baby, on location. I did bring a red Solo cup with me. I just landed probably about an hour ago and jumped into the hotel to jump on the podcast. I pulled my red Solo cup out and it was shattered. Those don't travel well in a suitcase, apparently. But I was able to scrounge up a little 8-ounce clear Solo cup and with a little water because I didn't have enough time to stop at the adult beverage stand to pick one up. So I do have a cup. So cheers to episode 4, my friend.
Cheers to episode 4. I got a little long drink action.
Always a good option.
A little Monday evening citrus. You can't beat it. It just goes down so smooth, especially
Exactly.
weather's turning, things are looking up. Man, we got a heck of a day here in Michigan. So we got a heck of a podcast coming up the rest of tonight for you too, and tomorrow morning. Tomorrow morning when you guys are listening to this. So we'll start with some NFL draft talk. You were up
Mm-hmm.
here in Michigan for the whole weekend, hanging out with some buddies, doing your NFL draft thing, your normal
Definitely
draft weekend.
Christmas in April. You know it.
Yep. And then we'll hit on Pretender versus Contender with MLB. We're about a month into the season. Everybody's played around 30-ish games. So we'll do a check-in there, see how everybody's doing. And then we'll pivot over to NBA playoff recap, see where everything's at there after the second full weekend. We got a couple of really good series. We got a couple of duds. Even a couple of the series that are 3-1 feel closer than that, so we'll hit on those. And
Mm-hmm.
then we'll finish up with some pound for pound rankings. This was, we'll say this was a listener submission from codename Snack King. We don't want to reveal his name just yet. That'll drive him nuts. But
Oh man,
he's the Snack King, so we'll call him that. So,
the king.
um, let's start NFL draft. What'd you think?
NFL draft. It was, if I had to describe it, lackluster to say the least. Outside of one big player that ended up falling and having some things happen to them. So we'll hit that in a little bit. But obviously, Cam Ward went first. No surprise there. Number 2 overall pick, very big surprise, Travis Hunter. Not necessarily that he went number 2, but that the Jaguars moved up from 5 to 2 and gave up this year's first rounder, this year's second rounder, which was, I think, 36 overall. They also gave up a first next year in 2026 to move up 5 spots to select Travis Hunter. And I think before we jumped on, you were sharing the commentary from the new general manager of the Jags, which is pretty interesting, almost like a political speech about how they felt about Travis Hunter. So if you haven't had a chance to go listen to that, go check that out. I think you'll get a pretty good laugh out of that. The rest of the draft seemed to go pretty good. We knew there was going to be quite a few running backs that ended up going, which was the case. Always got to touch on the Lions, just for our Lions fans out there. Tyleik Williams, defensive tackle. Not a lot of fans were super thrilled with that. Obviously, you always want the splash or the flash. You want a wide receiver, you want a running back, you want a skill position player, but everybody that's drafting at the end of the draft is normally building in the trenches, and they let the draft fall to them, which is what the Lions did. I would give that a solid B. I think it has a lot of upside. I think if the Lions fans are going to be real surprised with that, and they're going to be happy in the long run, and it filled a position of need. Jahad Campbell ended up falling to the Eagles. Howie season. He ends up doing it again and gets a top 5, top 10 prospect at pick 31. He ended up giving up a 5th round pick to go from 32 to 31 with the Chiefs, which I thought was interesting. But if you get your guy, even if you've got to give up a 5th round pick. And then part of the surprise we're going to hit on here in a second when I kick it back to you is Jackson Dart. I had a feeling he was going to end up going number 2 as a quarterback. The Giants moved all the way back up into the first round at pick 25 and picked Jackson Dart. And then there were a number of other quarterbacks that ended up going before the gentleman that we're going to cover next.
Yeah, just real quick, overall first round. I thought it was pretty chalky. I wasn't sitting watching it live like you were. I don't follow the draft nearly as closely. I kind of sit and watch it play out. So I wasn't sitting there watching every pick like you were with some buddies, but I thought it was fairly chalky. It was kind of uneventful, like you said, outside of Travis Hunter. The Jags kind of sold the farm to get him. So we'll see how that
Definitely.
plays out over the next couple of years. Obviously, the way that those draft picks play out will be a big thing to watch, especially next year, giving up another first. It feels like they might have reached, in my opinion. I don't know. There's still a lot of time will tell to see if he actually can play both ways, because I think that's a big selling point for what he wants to do. But we haven't seen anybody in the modern NFL be able to play significant snaps on both sides of the ball. So we'll see how that actually ends up playing out. And I think the biggest comparison I've obviously heard to him, especially playing cornerback, has been Charles Woodson. Charles Woodson was about 20 or 25 pounds heavier in the NFL than what Travis Hunter's grading out to be right about now. So
Yeah.
durability is a significant question with Hunter. Can he hold up playing both sides of the ball? Nobody knows at this point. Time will tell. Hunter is absolutely a freak. I'm not going to discount that. I think he's going to try. I think nobody's questioning as to whether he's going to try to play both sides of the ball, but can he hold up over an entire season? And is he productive? I think are the two big questions. So time will tell on that.
I I think he is going to, and I think he will at least for a season or two. I don't think he's going to keep doing it for his entire career. He's gone on record to say that that is what he wants to do, and he's let general managers know. The good thing for him is that the wide receiver and the cornerback position are both paid equally. So it's not one of the like Taysom Hill situations where he's a quarterback and a tight end. So can the team pay him as a tight end and get a cheaper discount than a quarterback? So that is in his benefit. But I think playing out in Colorado, playing in the elevation, and being able to play both ways with how many snaps he played. I get it, the NFL is a different level of competition. I still think he's going to go out there and try. And I don't think the Jaguars would have given up that much draft capital if they weren't going to let him attempt to play both sides, because it's two premier positions. And they're like, hey, if I can get a 2-for-1, why not just give up a second round pick and an extra first if we get a 2-for-1 at a highly regarded position?
Yeah, we're we've been getting comments from the peanut gallery out there that we don't disagree enough because we're both too likable. I don't think he's going to be able to hold up. I think he's going to get banged up. I think he's going to get dinged up. He's too light. I think people are going to, especially veterans, are going to be aiming for him on both sides of the ball. If you can take him out as a defensive player when he's on offense, blow him up when he's trying to run block, things like that, you can take him out of the game. I think he's going to go in with a target on his back. So we'll see if he ends up holding up. The one thing he does have going in his favor is in the NFL, those two positions are rotational spots for everybody anyway, outside of the elite ones, particularly wide receiver. Even if he only played receiver, he wouldn't play as many offensive snaps as he did in Colorado because you're just rotating in and out more in the NFL than you do in college anyway. Even the number ones are rotating off the field often in the NFL. I mean, the Jamar Chases of the world are coming off the field for a couple snaps here and there. They're not playing every single down. So he does have that going for him. But I think it's just going to be so tough for him to stay healthy over the course of an 18-game schedule. And I think playing for a bad team doesn't help him either. If you're catching my drift there, I just don't like. I think they're going to put too much on his plate too soon, and they don't have enough other great weapons, especially offensively. Like they're just going to end up force feeding him because they don't have enough.
Yeah, they have Brian Thomas Jr., which is going to be his saving grace because he can play number two. Brian Thomas Jr. has showed, at least in year one, that he's an elite talent,
Yep, I agree with
especially
that.
backing up the speed and the talent he had coming out in the draft last year. So I think to your point, I would agree to an extent, but he's also going to be playing wide receiver 2 or potentially wide receiver 3. It'll be interesting to see when Trevor Lawrence come back, how he comes back from that injury, what his mindset is. They have a solid coach in place, even though he's a little Duval. Even though Cohn's a little interesting cat, but
Good
um,
offensive mind, though.
great offensive mind. Look what he did, following up the first year as being the full offensive coordinator last year in Tampa. He did well with Baker, did well until Chris Godwin until he got hurt, did really well with Evans. Um, I'm interested to see. I think they also took Tootin, which is a smaller running back, like a scat back, and they did the same thing in Tampa last year with Bucky Irving, who was one of my favorite running backs coming out of Oregon last year. So it'd be interesting to see how they combo those up and how they get Travis Etienne back involved. But yeah, I would say if he did play on defense, he'll probably start out as a rotational player, maybe as a nickel corner just to get his feet wet and cut his teeth there. But I think just his mentality, his mindset, his talent, and his drive is going to will him to get through that entire season.
Yeah, he does have that going for him, absolutely. And he is a freak. Like, push comes to shove, he is an elite talent on both sides of the ball. So he does have that going for him. There's always luck of the draw when it comes to injuries too. Like some of that stuff can be just super unlucky, wrong place, wrong time. So uh, some of those injuries can be avoided just by depending on what that percentage of snaps is and things like that. And I'm sure they're going to be watching that. The other thing too is he's got to your point, he's got to win the jobs on both sides of the ball too. And like he's like, it's no longer just a given that he's going to be the best guy on the field. That's not a sure thing for both of those two spots. So it could very well be that he does play both sides of the ball, but he ends up being wide receiver 3.5 or something like that, kind of a mix between the 3 and the 4 or something, and then he ends up being the number 1 corner or number 2 corner. So like if that ends up being the case, then I could see him, if he's only playing 25% or like 40% even of offensive snaps, then that changes it. But time will tell. It's going to be super interesting to see how it plays out. It's also going to be very interesting for fantasy implications too. So
Yeah, you read my mind. I was just thinking of that. We talked about that a lot this weekend because we play in dynasty leagues, and you can have IDP defensive players, individual defensive players on there and on our rosters. So we were trying to talk like what is the value in fantasy, especially in relation to dynasty, because then you can put him at the defensive back position and get stats for defensive back and wide receiver. So that boosts him up. Does he go obviously top 3, but does he go 2 now? Does he go 1? Where does he go based on being able to play multiple positions and getting points in different positions? So it'll be good to go over probably in later podcasts as we get closer to the season and then we start talking a little bit more about fantasy football. But that's a great point.
yep. Especially dynasty, like you said, that you bring in that defensive aspect of it. It'll be very interesting to see where the consensus is from draft experts on regular leagues to see how big of an offensive factor people project him being once they get kind of a pulse of where training camp is and things like that. So it's going to be super interesting to watch. I'm very curious to see how well he meshes with Trevor Lawrence and that whole dynamic. So
Yeah, the other thing too is they play in a division that's not that good.
it's up for grabs.
CJ Stroud and the Texans were solid 2 years ago. They were okay last year. He was one of the most sacked quarterbacks, and they didn't help him on the offensive line via really the draft or free agency. They traded their best left tackle Tunsil over to Washington and the Commanders, and so they're iffy. And then you also have the Colts who have 2 quarterbacks, and if you have more than one quarterback, you don't have any quarterback, which I would agree with that. And then you have the Titans who just drafted a rookie quarterback. So I would say the Jags have significantly the upper hand with even having a new coach and Trevor Lawrence coming off an injury at taking the division. And I think Travis Hunter is going to be a big piece of that.
Yeah, I would agree. It's there. Depending on what the Jags do defensively, it'll be very interesting to see what ends up happening with the South. I think that's a bunch of mediocre teams. It's ripe for the picking. To your point, 2 years ago, the first 11 or 12 weeks of the season, Jacksonville was a really good team and fell off the map, and then it just continued into this past season. So we'll see this is already year 4 for Lawrence, which is crazy.
Yeah, I think it's 4 or 5. He did sign an extension. I think it is 4.
Which is just nuts that he's already been in the league that long. But we'll see. Very interesting. That was obviously one of the big talking points in round 1. The other major talking point for the entire weekend was Shadeur Sanders, and everybody from all the draft experts that I read or heard on any number of podcasts over the last handful of weeks thought Shadeur Sanders was the second best quarterback in the draft, and he was basically a sure thing first rounder. Ends up falling to the 5th round, to Cleveland, pick 144. And the weight was, even as somebody that wasn't really following it, as a person that had nothing, I didn't have anything in anything. I don't care what the Browns do. I'm not a Sanders fan. I'm not a Colorado fan. But just the overall level of noise as somebody that was browsing social media the 3 nights during the weekend, it was nuts seeing the amount of chatter about him falling, and it seemed like it took forever for him to come off the board.
Yeah, and if you listened to our podcast last week, I think someone on there had mentioned that they are not a huge Shadeur Sanders fan, and they thought he was going to fall. I don't think said person knew that they were going to fall to the fifth
To the
round,
fifth,
obviously,
no.
but I was a big fan of Jackson Dart, and who knows if he's going to pan out or not. But yeah, after the fourth round, I started feeling a little bit bad for him. But if you look at the two players, right, if you look at Shadeur Sanders and you look at Travis Hunter, and you're like, which one of those athletes would be Deion Sanders' offspring, Deion Sanders' son? Just from a swagger standpoint and a pure athletic skill standpoint, you would probably say Travis Hunter. So there's no surprise that he ended up going early. The surprise was Sanders falling all the way to the fifth round and then being picked by the Browns, which I think is going to end up being a blessing in disguise for him. He was not nowhere near NFL ready. He scrambled. He dropped too deep in the pocket. He threw the ball up and relied on Travis Hunter to go up there and get it. So even when ESPN or NFL Network was playing the highlights, everything was to Travis Hunter, and Travis Hunter was just that much better of an athlete than anybody else covering him, and he went and got the ball. It's not that the ball was accurate. So a lot of those stats that Shadeur had was because of Travis Hunter. But yeah, to see him fall to the fifth round and then hear all of the talking heads say how upset they were at the NFL, and they said that there was some kind of conspiracy with NFL owners, that they were trying to hold Shadeur down just because he's Deion's son and that kind of thing. I just rolled my eyes at that because I am not a huge NFL scout, obviously, but I could tell by watching those Colorado games and watching the tape that it wasn't going to be in the cards for him to start.
No, I would agree. The other thing too, I think you would agree with this too, is if somebody's talented enough, it doesn't really matter what their past is in the NFL. They're going to find a reason to sweep that under the rug and get them on the squad. Like they can justify anything that they want if you're good enough. So he's just not good enough. The the quote unquote circus would not have scared at least a third of NFL owners if he was good enough. That those guys have just as big, if not bigger, egos to be able to think that they can manage that. A bunch of them have relationships with Deion because not only did he obviously play in the NFL, he played for a bunch of the owners that are still owners in the NFL. He's been in the industry in general. He worked at NFL Network. He worked at CBS. He's worked at Barstool. He's just been around football, so these people know him and know how to handle him and what his shtick is. So it's been kind of overblown in my opinion that he's Deion's son and this circus and everything else. I just don't buy that. I just don't think he was that good. I think a bunch of his stats were padded in blowouts one way or the other. Either they were playing subpar competition and they ran away with it, or they were playing chase at the end. He ends up throwing for a bajillion yards in the fourth quarter when the game's 3 scores different and they're playing catch up, and I just don't think he's that good. I think he's a mid-tier quarterback, and I think this year's quarterback class overall was pretty subpar in terms of quarterback classes that we've seen the last 10 years. So I just the whole Deion thing, I didn't buy that. I don't know what the spin was there. I don't know. I'm sure you guys saw when you were watching Mel Kiper's whole speech. He got up on his soapbox and almost went into
Definitely.
tears and everything else. I thought that was pretty funny. I saw that
Yeah.
on social media. He just lost it, but I don't buy it.
Yeah, and to my point earlier, I think he's going to end up panning out better because of where he fell. And even if it's the Browns and everybody can laugh at, yeah, ha ha ha, it's the Browns. But with the whole Deshaun Watson thing, that'll be over in a year or two because they reworked his contract. He'll be done and he'll be out of there. Flacco's not, he's toast. He may have a half a season left in him next year. Same with Kenny Pickett. He's a journeyman quarterback. He did well for the Eagles last year filling in, but he's not a full-time starter. The interesting thing that though too is that they drafted Dylan Gabriel out of Oregon. I really like Dylan Gabriel. He went in the third round, also to the Browns, so they have him and Shadeur. And it goes to, does he take it as a slight or does he take it with a chip on his shoulder? Is he going to go in there and outwork people? I think just with having the last name and having the swagger that is Dion, I think he's going to go in there and work his tail off. And I think in probably not 1 or 2, probably 3, maybe 4 years, he's going to come out better on it, and he's going to end up being the starting quarterback of the Browns and showing that he was a raw talent. He wasn't NFL ready, but he put in the work, and he's going to sit for a few years. And there's no expectations on him now. Could you imagine if he went in the first round, the expectations that would be on him, plus the perceived lack of talent? Like he would have washed out. He's going to be in the league much longer now and have a better chance based on where he fell than if he went in the top 5 picks.
Yeah, I think it's going to be one of these prove it moments. Like, what do you got when you finally got to face adversity? Because he's been given the starting job basically the last 5 years, going back to his high school snaps. He didn't have to work for it in high school because Dion was his coach there. Didn't have to work for it at Jackson State because Dion was his coach there. He didn't have to work for it the last 2 years at Colorado because Dion was his coach there. So it's like, what do you got when you actually got to face adversity? Let's see it. Go win the job. If you're as good as what you want people to believe, go win the job. Because that quarterback room, to your point, is not stellar. It's they want him to win it. Like the push comes to shove, they would love for him to grab that job by the horns and run with it and end up being really good. The Browns would absolutely love that. They've got a bunch of guys that they don't really want in the room.
Yeah, and who knows, man? The Browns being the Browns, they've had a rough go of it. Maybe this is going to turn the tide for them somehow. People are laughing at it now, but maybe in 3-4 years, they won't be laughing as hard because the Browns are going to start to turn this thing around, and Shadeur might be the one to do it. Just like I said, not as a first round. There would have been so much going on in his head and so much high expectations in Cleveland. That and you pair that up with Deshaun Watson still there. Again, everybody thinks he's done, and he may or may not be done. Who knows? I think he's probably most likely done. But even if he bounces back a little bit, you have that added on there, and I just don't think it would have been the right spot to go for him to go or to a team that in the top 5. I think that's why he ended up falling. Again, I don't think he should have fell to the 5th round. I think he should have been in that late third, early 4th. But the Browns did a good job. I think they traded with the Eagles and got that mid-round pick and ended up going and taking him. So, but I think he'll eventually pan out.
I think he's going to get a really good shot. So we'll see what he's got. We'll see what ends up happening. They're going to give him every single chance. I mean, it's going to be Johnny Manziel 2.0. They're going to give him every single chance in the book to see what he's got because he's just so much raw talent and so much ability. And yeah, he's gonna want to get paid at some point, so he's gonna have to deliver. He's gonna be throwing up the Manziel fingers. So we'll see.
He's got to pay for those chains, man. Those chains aren't free.
Nope. Daddy's not gonna be cutting the checks anymore either. So we'll see what he's got. The other very interesting thing, I was following this just as closely over the weekend as the draft in general. The other piece of the Shadeur saga was this whole thing with the prank phone call. So for those that may have been living under a rock, don't follow the NFL as closely, whatever it may be, the NFL, for all potential NFL draft picks, everybody that enters their name into the draft, the way that I understand it is these guys put their phone number into a portal of some sort of database where all the NFL teams can get a hold of them and reach them to be able to get in touch with them about what their plans are, if they plan on picking them, all that sort of thing. So apparently the son of current Atlanta Falcons defensive coordinator Jeff Ulbrich, who is the former Jets interim head coach last year, just got let go by the Jets last year. Now he's the defensive coordinator for the Falcons. His son was a part of this prank phone call of Shadeur, telling Shadeur that he was going to be drafted. They impersonated, I believe it was Saints owner Mickey Lolich. Am I remembering that correctly?
Oh, Mickey Loomis.
Mickey Loomis. So they impersonated him and said, "Hey, I know it's been tough." I think the quote was, "I know it's been tough waiting as long as you have. You're going to have to wait a little bit longer," and then click.
Yeah, something. I think it's hang in there. "We're coming to get you" or something like that, and then
Yeah, it
just
was
hung up.
just brutal. Just a brutal prank phone call. And then, of course, I think these guys are all early college age, around 20-ish or so. So, they recorded it. And one of them I think there was 3 or 4 guys that were all part of this prank, and one of them had to post it on social media because you got to get cred for that. And then it ended up getting back to him that was Jax Ulbrich, Jeff's son. Just absolutely boneheaded move. I don't know why you would think that you wouldn't get caught and people wouldn't recognize you. You're hanging out around your dad. Not that hard to identify. So, kind of funny, kind of brutal at the same time. I think it was funny when it was earlier, and then the longer it went, the less funny the joke got. So, it the level of entitlement that Shadeur has, I think, made it funny initially, and then it ended up having some not great. This isn't really funny anymore vibes.
Yeah, regardless of what you think of him, whether you think he's a diva or with his family and the family name and Dion, it's these kids have put a lot of work into their craft and a lot of work to get to draft day, and to mess with somebody on that level, regardless of who it is just it's just mind blowing. Who does that to somebody? And then there's got to be some sort of repercussions that are going to come, right? How do you allow your son to get those contacts? How do you know who those contact numbers are going to go into? The NFL is probably going to look into it. I would be surprised if the Falcons didn't get lose a draft pick at some point because of it, or some sort of repercussions, or some suspension. Just because you can't let that stuff go. It's one of those things where, yeah, it's okay now, but you got all the clicks, and now you're going to come out after and say you apologize. That's just not going to cut it. That's just not something that needs to be done. That should have been done. It's just outright wrong.
Yeah, you can't have it. Like you said, you got to have protocols in place to not make that stuff available. I guess what the Falcons came out and said a day or so after was somehow Jack's got the phone number from an unlocked iPad or something like that. Like you've got to have more security with these guys' information than that. That just seems unbelievably weak and unbelievably easy to access. So, um, the other thing too that absolutely rubs me the wrong way is these guys are in front of friends and family and everything like that, and for the like you see a lot of these phone calls that they get, and they put people from the teams on speakerphone in front of all these friends and family, and to put them in that spot like that where you prank them in front of all these people and just end up kind of ruining their day and their moment when at that point he's not really looking to have much of a moment, to be honest. Like the Thunder's already been stolen. He was supposed to go in the first round. That kind of sent shockwaves through him, I'm sure. And then I think they made the phone call on day 2, and then he doesn't end up going until day 3. So just yeah, not great taste. I think it was one of those things where you get together with your buddies and you think it's going to be really funny, and then it ends up just not. So
Yeah,
from
it
the
ends up.
the standpoint of like it's Dion's kid, I can understand trying like you feel like you're picking on somebody that's bigger than you. I get it from that aspect, but like just the overall just poor taste, bad timing, didn't land.
Yeah, and that's why I went from not necessarily rooting against him, but now I'm definitely in his corner. He he didn't come out and say he should be a top 5 pick. He didn't come out and say he should be the number 1 overall pick. He didn't say any of that, at least to my knowledge. That he so he knew kind of what he was bringing to the table, and he didn't say anything when he didn't go in the first round. It just fell and kind of take it as it is. And for this to happen and then to go into the 5th round, I'm a fan. I'm gonna be rooting for him.
The other thing too, there's been reports saying that he was super arrogant and how he conducted himself during pre-draft interviews and everything. Him and the teams are the only ones that have that information as to whether that's true or not. Nobody really knows. So he wasn't the one that put himself with a first round grade. Like obviously all of these guys that are out for the NFL draft are hoping they go that high, but he's not the one that put that label on himself. So to put that level of expectation on him, I don't think is fair. He didn't do that. He just went out. He put the game. He put the film that he did on tape. He went out there. He worked out the way that he did. He did everything the way that he was capable of doing it, and let the chips fall where they may. And that ended up with him being a fifth round pick. So to say that he had some level of expectation otherwise, I think his dad put more of those expectations on him than anything, to be honest.
Well, I think the expectations were because of his dad, right? And who knows how much Prime coached him going into it. Maybe he coached him, hey, go in with swagger, go in with a little bit of arrogance, kind of fake it till you make it, and make the way you handle yourself, make them believe that that's the way you're actually going to play on the field. So I don't know how much of that was him just being him, or how much of that he was coached to do, or his dad told him to do. But very interesting and a big talking point. And now I think it'll kind of fade away for a little bit. I don't think it's going to get much more headlines. It might kick up a little bit once the season kicks off here, August, September, maybe around training camp. But I don't think it's going to be as much of a big storyline unless something else blows up with this prank call. But I do wanted to hit on it before we wrap up the draft. Jalen Milroe going in the third round to the Seahawks. Keep that in the back of your head for future. Who knows what's going to pan out with Sam Darnold? I think Milroe is a raw talent, something like Anthony Richardson, very raw from an athletic running quarterback. I think Anthony Richardson didn't get a fair shake by being thrown in the fire right away. I think Jalen Milroe is going to get that because he can play behind Darnold. So I think after Darnold's done in 2-3 years, if that happens, Jalen Milroe is going to come out and he's just going to explode. So that's a name, one of my top name to keep an eye on that went a little later, but also went higher than what people thought. But I wasn't surprised at that.
No, I like that. I think that's got sleeper dynasty written all over it. Stash them, sit on that one for a little bit. Especially maybe an injury pops up, you can get him a spot start, something like that. If Darnold gets banged up or something during the season, you can get him a little bit of run, get him a flavor for it, and then keep progressing him behind the scenes. I think that could end up having significant legs, especially the way that the Seahawks are starting to build that offense. JSN, everything like that. You can see them starting to turn away the corner from the Russ, DK, Metcalf era to something new here. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out.
Yep, definitely.
So I think that kind of wraps up more or less what I think our overall thoughts were on NFL draft. Pretty chalky, not anything too crazy outside of a couple trades and then the Shadeur drama most of the weekend. But outside of that, pretty uneventful. I think the biggest piece of that was there wasn't a lot of high profile quarterback play to be had. There wasn't a mad scramble to get to the top for a quarterback in this year's draft. So outside of that, there really wasn't anything that was overly eventful there. So
yeah, I think this year was very telling because I think we had nine guys over, and we were just chatting amongst each other, having a good time laughing, and we obviously quieted down when the next pick was coming in. But normally it was almost silence the entire time because we were so dialed into who's going to be the next pick, who's coming up, who's on the clock, who's trading. So just kind of an overall lackluster draft. But next year, to your point on quarterbacks, sounds like there's going to be 7 or 8 top-notch quarterbacks that are coming out next year. I think that's why a lot of teams held off on getting one or maybe traded some picks to get future first-rounders to maybe package a couple of them and go up and get some of the quarterback prospects next year. So I think next year, the 2026 draft is going to have a lot more fireworks than this year.
yeah, I think you'll start seeing teams lobbying the last third of the NFL season to try and get draft position too, depending on what that looks like and depending on how their season breaks. So obviously tanking in the NFL isn't nearly as big of a thing, but I think when the quarterback crop is as good as it is, and if you get into a bind, all of a sudden you might see teams start making deals at the deadline that you wouldn't have expected because they're just looking to unload talent to be able to kind of flop the rest of the year and move up the draft board.
Yeah, that reminds me of the year Andrew Luck came out and the Colts slogan was "Suck for Luck."
Yep.
So, yeah, that'd be interesting. To your point, yeah. If anybody trades it'd be interesting to see if they trade players for players or if they trade players for draft capital and then use that draft capital to move up. So, something to keep eye out as the season plays out next year, especially towards the trade deadline.
Yep. Yep, absolutely. So next up here, we're gonna hit Pretender versus Contender in Major League Baseball. We're about a month in, about 30 games total for almost everybody. We're gonna rifle through the top of the MLB standings here, get Contender versus Pretender to see what our overall thoughts are here. I know you've been following a little bit closer than normal
Yep.
baseball the last couple of weeks. Phillies are solid. Your
The
Phils.
Fighting Phils, they're just like every other Philly sports team. Maybe it's just because I'm a Philly fan, but they're either hot, or super cold. They were on a heater to start, and then they had a lull for about 7 or 8 games where they were just losing uh, each series 2-1, and they're holding in there at 15-13. But yeah, so it'll be interesting to see how they pan out. And then you got the Mets in that division that they're just running away with it. They're solid. I think they swept the Phillies, so that'll be tough too.
Yeah, I think the Mets are absolutely a contender. I think they're going to be a juggernaut. They invested big time dollars and it's starting to show. So having Juan Soto at the core of their lineup, I think adding in some pieces in the rotation, they're going to be really, really good. I think barring significant injury, they've got depth, they've got power, they've got speed, they've got defense, they've got pitching. I think they're just going to be a significant problem for everybody in the NL. They seem to be the odds-on favorite to come out of what that side of the NL bracket to face either we'll pivot out west. The NL West is an absolute free for all. Absolute nuts out west. Because everybody thought the Dodgers were going to run away and hide. And then the Padres were red hot, and now the Giants are even hotter. So I don't know who's going to end up coming out of that division, but it is a mess out there.
Yeah, I think the Rockies, and again, I know this is contender pretender, but I think the Rockies are going to give the White Sox from last year a run for their money as the most losses in MLB history. Right now they're 4-23, but they're playing the Giants are in their division, the Dodgers, the Padres, and even the D-backs. I mean, they're not going to win many of those games, and that's who they play the majority of the time. I think they're going to be right up there and probably going to set that loss record and eclipse it. We might see back-to-back seasons where the loss record is eclipsed, which is
Yeah,
crazy.
135, 140 losses might be on the table. Because to your point, like they're gonna lose so many games to the Giants, the Padres, and the Dodgers, and the D-backs are getting written off, but they're still above 500 in that division. So the top of that division is just going to eat itself up, and the Rockies are going to be everybody's. We got to win these 3 games to have any semblance of a chance. Like the Rockies are weirdly going to get everybody's best game because everybody's going to know that they got to take those 3 to have a chance to win the division. You can't slip up.
Definitely. Definitely. And it's interesting. They're minus 69 run differential. And then you compare that to the Mets, which I already thought this was outrageous. They're plus 50 runs. And that's the highest by 8 runs. The Yankees are plus 42, and the Tigers, your team, is plus 42, which we'll get to here in a little bit. But I thought plus 50 runs, minus 69 runs. I don't think I've ever seen that on a run differential. So I think they're going to end up setting that mark.
They're crazy bad, and it's just bad timing, like you said, because the division's so good. The other one I wanted to hit on quick in the National League, the Cubbies. America loves the
Cubbies.
Cubbies. I'm going to say Pretender. And just from the standpoint of if you look at the other 4 teams, they're probably going to have to go up against at some point in the NL. I just don't see them overcoming any of the other 4, with those being the Mets, the Dodgers, the Padres, and the Giants. They're a fifth fiddle. And I think that's pretty decided, at least in my opinion.
Yeah, I'm going to say contender on this one. Just because if you look at their division, you got the Reds, the Brewers, the Cardinals are always solid, but they end up falling apart. And then you got the Pirates, who they can't get any fans into the stands because they don't put any talent around Skeens. So they're right there. They're 11-18. They're not that much different than the Rockies, but at least the Rockies have fans show up still. I just think the Cubs in the Central Division are going to get enough wins just purely because of the division that they're in and who they have to play the majority of the time, that they're going to be up there towards the top. Now once they get into the playoffs, it's probably going to be a little bit different of a situation, right? They're going to have to play some of those tougher teams, but I think once you get to the playoffs, though, anybody has a chance. Anybody has a chance. So I think just by being in the Central, they have a really good chance at least making a little bit of a run.
Yeah, I think they're postseason bound just based on their division. Like you said, I don't think their division's that great, so I think they'll end up coming out of the division. But I don't think serious contender for National League title. I don't think they're that close. So obviously, injuries during the course of the season could change that for the other teams and boost them. So we'll see how that breaks. But I think they're solid. I think they're having a really good year. They made some really good moves. Um, so we'll see what ends up breaking there. Pivoting to the American League. We'll do the Central last because I obviously have the most to say about that with the Tigers being there. Um, Yankees, Red Sox, and we'll go down the Rays. The Rays are always sneaky, but Yankees, I'm going to say AL contender. Yankees are legit.
Yeah, they're obviously they have always one of the top payrolls, so I would hope that they would be legit and right there. The Red Sox, though, are right there on their heels. I think the Red Sox end up taking the East this year.
I
Um,
I could see
I don't
it.
know how Baltimore is that bad. Baltimore had a good young core, and they were solid for the last two seasons, but they're a minus 39 run differential at 10 and 17. I don't know. I just the limited amount of games I've watched this year of the Yankees and Red Sox, I really like the way that the Red Sox play, and I think they're going to surprise a lot of people and end up coming out of the East. I still think, to your point though, the Yankees are going to at least get a wild card, if not win the division. I just think the Red Sox are going to surprise a lot of people and take the East this year.
Yeah, I think the Red Sox are the scrappier of the two teams. I think they're the ones that are playing with a little bit more edge. I think the Yankees have expectations on them.
Yep, exactly.
Boone, I think, is kind of at the end of his leash here. They've spent and spent and spent, and then they still couldn't get Soto. So I think Boone's the next one on the chopping block, right, wrong, or otherwise. So we'll see what ends up happening there. Like you said, the Orioles are a huge surprise. I was watching the Tigers play the Orioles over the weekend. The Orioles lineup is still insane with how good it is. You've got Henderson at short. You got Rutschman at catcher. You've got Jackson Holiday at second base. Like you got Cedric Mullins in center field. Like you got guys just all up and down the lineup. They just have zero pitching. All their pitching just up and left. So it's just I don't think they can get anybody that can keep the other team down,
Yeah.
and they can't score enough to keep up. So it's insane what they have with their lineup, but what's wilder to think about is they might be in a position to have to sell here in the next year or two, which is crazy with some of the talent they've got. So
Yep.
we'll see what ends up shaking out there. AL West, I think odds-on favorite for me. I'm gonna go Rangers come out of the West. I think the
You're going
Rangers end up taking
Rangers?
it. Yeah, I think the Rangers end up
Ah,
taking it.
man. I don't know. I can't bet against the Astros. I'm gonna have to take the Stros. And then the Athletics are surprising. They're at a ballpark that's not even their home ballpark because they're getting one built in Vegas. The Angels, I'm surprised at them as well. They have a pretty solid young roster, but yeah, I'm gonna go Astros out of the West because the Mariners always lead it and then they tail off at the end.
If I was in the market, I would go to every A's game I could. I think that would be so much fun, and I would root for them so hard. I think that would be like the ownership has just completely written them off, and all they care about is the P&L and just trying to grow profits and make money, and they don't care about the actual product on the field at all. They don't really want to spend any money. That whole thing has been such a debacle with the way that A's ownership and Major League Baseball have handled the whole thing. I would be furious if that was the Tigers and the way that's played out. But
Yeah.
it is hard to root against the Astros because they're just always there. They're always at the finish line when it comes push comes to shove. It's hard to trust. Like obviously the Rangers won it a couple years ago, so but it's hard to trust the Mariners. I just don't have any trust in them.
Nope. Nope. They'll end up finishing third. It'll be. I think it's going to be Astros, Rangers. Astros are going to win it. Rangers are going to get a wild card. And then I think, is there 2 wild cards in
Yep.
baseball?
Yep.
I think the wild cards will come out of the West and the East.
I think so too.
And I think as we're going to talk about the Central here, I'll let you tee that up here real quick, since that's your
Tigers.
squad.
Tigers are gritty. The Tigers are gritty, baby. They are red hot, coming off a sweep of the O's. They look dominant, at least from a pitching standpoint. The other thing that gives me an insane amount of promise is they're doing this with a completely cobbled together lineup. They've got a bunch of injuries up and down the lineup, and yet they still keep winning games. So they're pitching, not to my surprise because I follow the team so closely. I guess to the level of good is a bit of a surprise, but I thought they'd have 3 really good starters. They have 5. And the the guys that are taking steps forward don't look like they're slowing down. Those are the guys that are actually at the top of the heap right now. So
Mm-hmm.
Casey Mize has come out of nowhere for him. He's just absolutely lights out. If you were to give the Cy Young to anybody right now in the American League, I think he would be in the top 3 for contenders so far, ahead of Tarek Skubal, which is wild.
Yeah, that's
Uh,
crazy.
Flaherty's been really good coming back. The people don't talk enough about what Scott Harris did with that deal at the deadline. Sent him to LA. He went and won a ring. He comes back on a 1-year deal. The Tigers end up with Trey Sweeney, who's their starting shortstop now, and then Flaherty comes back on a 1-year deal the next offseason. Like everybody won. The Dodgers won, Flaherty won, Tigers won. So I've never seen a trade like that where it literally pans out in every single party's favor. Um, but I think the 2 biggest surprises for the Tigers have been Javi Baez and Spencer Torkelson. Your boy
Ooh,
Torque,
torque bomb,
your
torque
boy
bomb.
Torque.
Yep,
Javi Baez has become
always.
an everyday center fielder, and that is absolutely hilarious. I love that.
Yeah, when I go with the guys down on our Florida trip down to Lakeland to watch spring training, Baez was always in the doghouse. So it is good, to your point, to see him bouncing back and starting to get some love.
He's got so much. When things are going good, he's one of those guys that just brings the vibe of the clubhouse up. And when he's playing well, he is such a spark plug and such a live wire for the squad. So I'm not surprised that they're playing as well as they are, in part because he's playing as well as he is. I think he's one of those just throw logs on the fire type of guy. Like the bigger the fire, the more he's going to keep burning. And I'm not in any way surprised that he's doing well in center field just because he's one of these old school ball players. Like, just put me out there. I just want to, he was built to play baseball. He plays it with a certain pizzazz. He's going to take risks. He plays it the way he reminds me of, like, the way that they play baseball on the Sandlot, the old movie.
Classic Sandlot.
Like,
Yeah, I
that
wish.
type of vibe.
Yeah, I wish I could disagree with you there. I think the Tigers, and again, I don't think anybody that is listening to the podcast right now would be happy with me if I did disagree. I don't think there's a team in there that could do it. I mean, Cleveland would probably be the only team that could, and they may give them a run for their money. But I don't see the Royals. I don't see the Twins, and obviously I didn't realize it, but the White Sox are only 7-21. They're only 3 games better than the Rockies. So I think the 3 top at the division, the Tigers, the Guardians, and the Royals are gonna pick the bones of the White Sox again, and hopefully to your point earlier, they're gonna have to sweep and get 3 games out of each one of those series if they want to hope to continue to be contending in the Central. But I think the Tigers take it.
Yeah, and they've only got more help coming too. When they get a couple more of these bats back, it just adds more fuel to it. So we'll see what ends up happening. They've had, in terms of injury luck, they've had pretty bad breaks already. Outside of, knock on wood, outside of pitching. When it comes to the lineup, they've had some pretty significant breaks that I thought would be fairly catastrophic to the lineup because it wasn't on paper a great lineup coming into the season with some major question marks. So we'll see what ends up happening when they get a few of these guys back. But pitching's, if the other team doesn't score, in theory you should win. So that's kind of the strategy they've been going with, and it's been working. So we'll see what ends
Yeah,
up happening there.
yeah. I can imagine at the end of the season, Tigers versus Dodgers. Everybody that's outside of LA would be massive Tigers fans.
Yeah,
That the Detroit in those home games would just be bananas. I might even come back for a game if that were to be the case.
That
I'll
would be
go with
so
you
much fun
guys.
because it would the Dodgers have become the Yankees in that respect of like the
Hmm.
Western version of the evil empire because they've spent so
Massive
much money.
payrolls. They sign everybody. They get everybody from Japan and overseas because they're close over there, and they have
They handpick all the
uh,
big free agents.
definitely.
Like
And they
they
can
made the moves for Mookie, they made the moves for Freddie Freeman.
Otani, and then they spread his $700 million salary over 10 years. So he's basically getting paid beans now,
Yep.
and they're going to eventually have to either rework it or pay him in the future just so that they can build this super team. So a lot of people, obviously, unless you're a Dodgers fan, are going to be rooting for him. And if they were playing the Tigers, it would be almost like this year's version of the Eagles and the Chiefs. If the Bills would have been in instead of the Chiefs, everybody would have been a huge Bills fan and pulling against the Eagles. But because it's the Chiefs, everybody's like, lesser of two evils. I'm gonna root for the Eagles just because we're sick of seeing the Chiefs. And I think that's how it would be if the Dodgers and Tigers were to make it to the series this year.
Yep, I would agree. That'd be so much fun. Oh, I would lose my mind if the Tigers made it to the World Series again. Oh
Oh,
my
a lot of
gosh.
people up there would.
Oh.
I would be happy for them.
So Pretender Contender MLB covered that one. I think we've kind of exhausted that. We'll swing
Yep.
over. We can breeze through some NBA playoff stuff. Some series have already begun to wrap up or are very close to it. So we've got a
Surprise, surprise.
bunch of results here with where everything stands. Um, we can breeze through just a couple. The Thunder swept the Grizz. Not even close to being a series. I think there was one game that was close out of the four. Very uneventful, not very entertaining. I don't really have a whole lot to
Disappointing.
add. Yeah,
Disappointing. But obviously, it goes back to what we were talking about in an earlier episode. They fired their coach towards the middle or end of the season, and what do you expect? The coach brings a lot of the continuity to it, and then you had John Morant doing all of his antics, and then he cleaned that up to a certain extent, and then he ended up getting hurt in the one of the play-in games, so he wasn't himself. But the no surprise is what we were talking about on one of the earlier episode too is their two big men were huge liabilities just because they really only bring it on one side of the court, and they took advantage of that. So not surprising that they were swept in the least bit.
no, I don't think so. Wasn't very entertaining. Didn't really watch hardly any of it.
Nope.
The other one that the games have been fairly close, but the series is starting to get out of hand. Minnesota leads the Lakers 3-1. Um, to your credit, Ant is doing big Ant things.
Yep.
He's been a powerhouse.
This is his coming out on a national stage, and I'm happy for him. He's been doing things the right way. He is doing it against the Lakers, who are always on prime time, always in the spotlight. Doing it against LeBron and Luca, the pseudo super team. So no surprise there. I know they won the third game. It was pretty tight. I think they only won by 3 yesterday. But just seeing him do big things and happy for that team, and that one may go to 6 if but the Lakers got to win this next one. I think they're going to end up taking it 4-1.
Yeah, this LeBron's going to absolutely empty the clip here. I would not be surprised if all of a sudden he comes out of nowhere and puts up 30 shots here in Game 5 because he's not going to want to go down. But they just don't have any depth behind LeBron and Luca. There's just nothing there. They've got nobody. And especially when it comes to size on the inside, like Gobert is just a problem for them. They've got nobody to match up with him, and they've got no answers there. LeBron and Luca can't do anything against that. And they really don't have anybody that matches up well defensively against Ant either. Anybody that's a decently athletic wing. LeBron's too old and Luca's too slow.
Yeah.
And both of those guys can get their own on offense, but they don't have an answer for two of the most pivotal positions in the NBA right now. Just kind of wild.
Yeah, the Lakers, a little subtle thing that happened at the trade deadline is just because I'm a pseudo Hornets fan. They tried to make a trade for Mark Williams, the second-year center out of Duke, 7-footer. I think that trade being null and void because of a potential health concern that he had was a huge detriment to them. I think they were really banking on getting that trade done because Jackson Hayes isn't getting it done. They don't have another center that's going to be in there to help them compete and give LeBron and Luka a little bit of break on the defensive side, a rim protector, somebody that just gets rebounds, and Mark Williams is actually a pretty good scorer. So I think that was their ultimate demise. That's going to get under the radar just because of the whole Luka thing. But the Lakers are toast.
Yep, I agree. They're getting ready to. The longest I see that going is 6. The Lakers
Yep.
might be able to scrape one more, but I would not be surprised if the T-Wolves close that one out. The other one that's still surprisingly decently early. Do they play tonight? Rockets and Warriors? Is that one of the ones
Yep, they
tonight?
play tonight. Yeah,
Okay.
I'm gonna go to a local sports book and watch that one after we get wrapped up here.
Um, Golden State leads that one 2-1. I think the biggest thing that we're seeing is just youth with Houston. They're just not ready yet, in my opinion. And Steph is Steph. The surprise, I think, is that Golden State won game 3 without Jimmy. I thought that was a bit of a surprise.
Yeah,
So,
he ended up getting hurt in the second quarter, didn't he?
yep. So I think it's up in the air as to when he comes back. I think if the series goes fairly deep, or if Golden State makes it to the second round, I think there's a decent chance he comes back. But he might miss the next game or two in this one, so we'll see. Houston's tough still. They're young. They're scrappy. But Steph is Steph, and until proven otherwise, he's gonna keep getting his. And Draymond, even though he's getting a little bit long in the tooth, he plays on the other end of the floor. It's not like you've got this Lakers matchup where both guys are playing on offense. Draymond is totally fine not scoring. He is just going to be annoying. He's going to rebound. He's going to get in your face. He's going to try and grind the other team's gears. Like, he's just going to lean into that. He loves that role. So we'll see what they have for Game 4 tonight. But Golden State leads that one 2-1. The
Yeah,
one that's interesting.
that's in Golden State too. I'd be surprised if they lost that. If the Rockets, it's a must win for them, obviously, but I don't see them losing tonight to the Warriors. I think Steph thrives on that home crowd, man.
Oracle's going to be rocking. I think he's going to come out. He's going to hit a couple threes out of the jump, and the Rockets are going to be on their heels chasing for the rest of the game. So we'll see what ends up happening. I won't be watching that one. That's 10 o'clock Eastern, way past my bedtime. So the other one that is a very interesting series, this one I think goes 7, is the Clippers and the Nuggets. Super fun series.
The
Crazy back and
Clippers, I
forth.
told you, and I forgot that even Kawhi was back. Kawhi is just a monster. I think they still take this series. I had them for some reason taking the series before I even realized that Kawhi was back. I just think, again, with the Nuggets turning over their GM, turning over their coach, they're going to get enough out of the Joker just because he's always a leading candidate and multiple-time MVP. But I just don't think that they have enough to take out this Clippers team. And then Harden playing a support role next to Kawhi and just doing his thing. Every time he drives to the basket, he's getting fouled and getting put on the line. So, yeah. I think the Clippers take this. It might go 7, but I'm still saying Clippers take the series.
The longer it goes, the more I go Clippers, because I think Jokic just starts to run out of gas a little bit. The more I think they figure out those other pieces. Even if you let Joker go for 40 and you keep everybody else down, the Nuggets are gonna have a hard time winning. So the longer it goes, the Nuggets need to just get it closed out as quick as they can. They need to win the next 2. If it goes 7, I don't see the Clippers losing that. So we'll see. Obviously, Game 5 going to be super pivotal back in Denver. So we'll see what ends up happening there. I think that's a must win. I don't think the Nuggets can close that one. I think they need to win both games at home. So we'll see what ends up happening there.
Mm-hmm.
Pivoting over to the East, we can skim through this one really quick because the series is over. I just pulled up my phone looking to see who's playing tonight. I don't know if you've glanced.
Yeah, that we were talking about going and betting since I'm in Vegas. I think the opening line was Cleveland by 8.5, And I would have put money on that definitely by 8.5. I think they're getting smoked right now. They were down like 60-20 or something a second ago when I was checking.
66-23 is the current score with 3 minutes
Yeah,
left in the
that.
second quarter.
Yeah, you can do the old Steph Curry. That one's going to sleep tonight, my friend.
Yep. I don't know that you could get odds on the Cavs currently. That's like minus 20,000. So
Yeah, it's probably blacked out right now.
um, the Cavs are putting the Heat to sleep. That one's gonna be 4-0. They're gonna sweep them. So that one's not gonna go too much further. The rest of the East isn't shaping up to have some super long series, but there is some bad blood, which is kind of interesting across the board. At least in two out of the other three. We can skim through. Celtics, I think, are going to close out the Magic. The Magic are scrappy. I think they're going to be an interesting team in a year or two, but I just don't think they've got enough juice currently. The Celtics are just too good.
Yeah, they're not gonna beat the Celtics. I was happy that they got one game though.
Yeah.
I do think they're gonna be a formidable team, especially if they can keep this young core group together. But yeah, we can just glance over that one. Celtics are gonna take that one in 4 or in 5.
Yep, I agree. I think they close it out. Pacers are beating up on the Bucks. I think the Bucks are basically dead now, especially now that Dame's out. It looked like he tore
He
his
he
Achilles.
should have never come back in the
Nope.
first place. He rushed it back, and then that's what happens when you rush back. Now he's gonna be out for all of next season too. And who
Yep.
knows if is ever going to be the same. You marry up that Achilles injury with age and how much athleticism you need to have and how much burst to play at that position. We may have seen the last of Dame time
Yep.
at that level, which is sad. But I understand why he did. You're a competitor, right? You want to come back. You want to give your team at least a chance. But wrong place, wrong time, and I think the Pacers close this out at home tomorrow.
Yep, I would agree. The other thing, to your point, like he's trying his window, regardless whether he plays next year or not, his window is closing. So I think that like he saw it as like how many more chances do I have to be on a playoff team? Period. He's 34 now already, which is crazy. We might not see him back until he's pushing 36 if he misses basically all of next season, which he's going to be very close to doing. Like optimistically, best case scenario, March ish. So we'll see what
Yeah,
ends
and
up happening.
my hot take on this is I don't think Giannis is a Buck next year. I think he moves on. I think they blow up this entire roster, and I think they let Doc Rivers go. I think I think it's a full fledged. I think they go to Giannis and do the right thing for him and say, hey, we appreciate your commitment to us. We appreciate everything. What do you want to do? And I think he's going to say he wants to go to another team and start fresh and see what he can do out there. So I don't think he's going to be a Buck next year.
It's not working, so they might as well trade him and start getting draft picks. Load up on the draft, see what you can get for picks. Because if they play the cards right, they end up putting it out there in front of the whole league. They should get like he's one of the top 4 best players in the league. You're going to get a massive haul. So
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see if the Pistons can do a run here. Do the Pistons get in that sweepstakes and say we're going to pair him up with Cade and put him on that squad?
that would be wild. That would be wild.
If they that's kind of why I was hoping they were going to go on a run. They've kind of been getting hosed in this series by the refs, but we'll probably cover that one here next.
Yeah. So we can pivot to that one. I'm out of takes with the Pacers. I think the Pacers close that one out. The Bucks are the walking wounded right now, so I think the Pacers close that one out in 5. So the only one that leaves is the Knicks and the Pistons. Some really good bad blood in this series. There's been some animosity. The teams are getting fired up. The Pistons, we had it going in our group chat the other day. I said the Pistons are close, but this isn't horseshoes and hand grenades. And our other buddy hadn't heard that saying before, so that kind of made me chuckle. But the Pistons are. I've said this basically since when they got into the playoffs. I think they are a full season of healthy Jaden Ivey away from being a serious contender with the Cavs and the Celtics for the East. Because the Cavs and the Celtics are a tier above everyone else. And even though the Knicks might close this series out in 5, going back to New York, it's a much closer series than a 4-1 series, in my opinion. It's been very close.
Oh, definitely. A call here and there, a bounce here and there, and that's this series has been super tight, and that's why I was hoping that they would have pulled that one out the other night and go back 2-2, because then you know it's at least going six. And the bad blood and watching that and how the effort that both teams are putting into it, because that's always the knock on the NBA, right? During the regular season, players take time off or they're hurt and they play every other game. But it's really nice to see in this series effort and passion and intensity coming through in the NBA, and it makes it that much more pleasing to the eye to watch. And it's one of those things where I don't want the series to end, knowing that eventually has to, but it's been very good to watch. I think I've watched all of those games start to finish.
It's been super entertaining. I love the bad blood. I love that guys are getting fired up. I love that there's technicals all over the place. I love that guys are
Mm-hmm.
shoving each other. There's scrums. I love the back and forth. I love it feels like what it had to have felt like. Obviously, you and I weren't paying attention to it, but it feels like 80s, 90s Pistons Knicks with some of the bad boys, Patrick Ewing, all this stuff. It feels like those bygone eras of guys caring significantly more that we don't see nearly as often anymore in the NBA, with a lot of these guys liking each other and a lot of these guys being buddies off the court. This feels like two teams where nobody on either side is really that close with anybody else on the other side, which is fun. I think that makes it way more entertaining, way more interesting. Um, the Pistons are one player away, I think, from being a legit contender, whether that's Ivy, whether that's somebody else. The thing I will say is they've answered some significant questions that they wanted to have answers to going forward. Cade Cunningham is absolutely as legit as they come. He's every bit of a 1-1. The hype is absolutely for real with him. You've answered that question. He's a moving into next year. I don't think it's a hot take to say that he's a top five player in the league at this point. Um, the other question you've answered significantly, Jalen Duren, absolutely a beast. He is a freak inside. He took a massive step forward. Uh, the other kind of secondary questions that have been answered that you kind of wondered if they would play out. Even without him on the floor, Isaiah Stewart is a big piece for them going forward. I think he's completely bought into that backup center role, which is underrated. He can give you 25 high energy minutes. I think you're seeing the results of him not playing in this series. A bucket here, a bucket there. What would his defense look like on Cat and some of these moments down the stretch if they had him available in the game to rotate in and keep
Mm-hmm.
keep Duran fresh. And then lastly, the other thing I think they've answered is JB Bickerstaff is the guy for the job on the bench. He's the guy
Big
that can get
fan.
them to
Big
play.
fan.
Um, I think the guys like him, which in my opinion, I don't know if you'd agree with this. I think that's the biggest key for an NBA head coach. You're not talking really X's and O's or anything like that. I think you're talking likability and do the guys want to play for that guy? And he's absolutely got everybody bought in on their roles. So they've gotten questions answered. They're just not quite there from a talent perspective. They're close.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of big names on the move. You got everything that's happening in Phoenix. Where does KD go? What happens to Booker? What happens to Beal? I think Giannis. Like obviously, we already talked about Giannis wanting to potentially be on the move. What happens with some of these other teams? Where do they go? Like, there's already enough super teams. Like, you can't plug and play those players on the Lakers or the Mavericks. Or the Celtics can't afford them. So where do they go? They have to go to some of these up and coming teams with some young talent on them. It'll be interesting to see who Orlando gets, who the Pistons end up getting. It's teeing up to be a really interesting offseason.
Yeah, you've got other guys that are interesting pieces where it's going to be very intriguing to see what happens. Where does LaMelo Ball end up playing? Who ends up paying him?
Yep.
Like, very intriguing piece. Can he actually be part of a winner? Time will tell. Um, Somebody like a Jamal Murray, probably if he's on a really good contender, third or fourth best option, but he's going to command a decent sized contract at some point. Where does he end up playing?
Yeah, he reminds me a lot of when Donovan Mitchell left and went to the Cavs. He was always a 2 or a 3 option and ends up going and signing with the Cavs and makes him a bona fide number 1. So I could see him being in that same mold.
Yep. Yep. Um, Yeah, I think it's going to be an interesting next couple of off seasons to see where all these guys end up shaking out, where the money plays out, who gets paid, who doesn't get paid. But I think my biggest impression, obviously being a big Pistons fan, is very positive. We're playing with house money. Nobody expected the sixth seed that I know of. Even the most optimistic people expected contending for a play-in spot. They blew past that. So hope it would be cool to see them extend this series the longer it goes, even from just an overall basketball consumption standpoint. I want more Knicks and Pistons matchups. This is fun. So
Hmm.
hopefully they can squeak out game five, but they're they're not going to get any calls. Uh, they need to know that going in, and they got to be ready for that. Cooler heads got to prevail to some extent, even though they need to play charged up. But it'll be it'll be super fun. I think game five's tomorrow, Tuesday, tomorrow night, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, tomorrow night, 7:30 Eastern, 4:30 Pacific.
Love that. That'll be just in time for you to catch it out west too.
Yeah, I know, but I'll have to be at that convention, unfortunately. But it doesn't stop
Ah,
me from following it on the phone. You know what I'm saying?
yeah. Leave those people. Forget that. Forget that work stuff.
Yeah, who
Um,
needs it?
So yeah, NBA recap. That's kind of the state of the state with where the series are. Things are coming to a close. Round one. The the cream is rising to the top. So I think that's going to continue to be the theme here. Obviously, as we move forward, the best teams are going to continue to be the best teams. So I'm not really surprised with any of these results. We'll see. We got some interesting series that are shaping up to potentially go deep. I want more Nuggets, Clippers. I want more Warriors, Rockets, and I want more Pistons, Knicks.
Yeah. What I should have done there is countered your hot take and said the worst teams are going to continue to be the best teams, and then everybody would be happy that we ended up countering each other.
Yeah, we apparently just agree on too much. It's just because we're both right on almost everything. That's what people don't want to give us
Great minds
credit
think
for.
alike.
Yeah,
Great minds think alike, and it's once we start having guests and start doing that kind of stuff and having some folks on here, then we'll get into the whole breaking down and having some different opinions. But
excuse me for not wanting to be wrong. Like I don't that.
excuse me for being right.
Yeah, I'm just not gonna throw something out there that I think is stupid just for the sake of disagreeing with you. If I
And to
think
be
you're
honest,
correct,
if you go back and listen through some of this, there's not many we haven't hit on. So
we're pretty
eh,
adept in what we talk about, and
exactly.
to be we're not insanely closely like I'm not watching every single minute of every single game either. I'm just kind of skimming through my own general gut instinct. So kind of people are getting fired up that we don't disagree, but I'm not. Like I said, I'm not Skip Bayless. I'm not just throwing stuff out there about the Cowboys just to be wrong.
Exactly. And it gives them a reason to keep coming back. Well,
Dak's
one
a
of many
bad
reasons.
quarterback.
One of many reasons. They want us to disagree. So eventually we're going to disagree and they don't want to miss it. So
Yeah, I disagree with the
maybe we just
audience.
agree. Maybe we just agree to keep the audience coming back. Show them some love.
I disagree with the audience. So that was one of the two things we were gonna close with was putting money on these two games because you're out in Vegas. You can go find a real live in-person sports book, which would be fun. The other game is like we said, Houston and Golden State. Golden State's -3.5 at home.
You taking that bet. You take the 3.5.
Yeah, I think I take that too. I think
I
I
think
take
Jimmy
Golden
is
State.
playing. Everything
Is
that
it?
I'm seeing shows that he's active.
Is that what Sham said? Let me see what Sham said.
Ahead of
Oh,
tonight's game.
yeah. To your point, it was ESPN. It was Shams that reported Jimmy is playing tonight. So hammer that 3.5. Hammer that 3.5. Yeah, the night is young out there. So um, the other thing we'll wrap up with listener submitted suggestion, pound for pound. We'll see how this goes. We'll breeze through this because we're already getting a little bit long. We'll pick three each months on the calendar. So you can kick things off. You got 1-1, and then we'll go back and forth from there. And this is for any rhyme, reason, what have you. Sports related, could be holiday related, could be weather related, whatever you want to do. Yep. Um, Whatever it may be. Yep. So we'll do three each, and that obviously covers half of the months of the calendar. But this might be, depending on how we feel this goes, this might be our new recurring segment is our pound for pound rankings. And then what we're planning on doing is we'll put up a little graph and a little chart to see who we think won, and we'll submit that on Insta and X and see if we can get some votes going and see if people can weigh in between now and the next show, and then we'll reveal who the people thought took the dub. So go ahead, kick things off. Best, your opinion, best month on the calendar. This might be a little bit of a surprise. I'm gonna go October for very similar reasons to you. Spooky season. My wife and I get big into spooky season, especially a little bit now with trick or treating with our daughter. Yep, we love going and doing that thing, and she's just gonna keep getting more and more into it as we go along too. So as she gets older, I think we'll lean more into the Halloween theme and like 31 days of spook or whatever. So I think that'll be fun. The weather is a smidge cooler and very much more hoodie season, which everybody loves. You start pulling out those hoodies, really comfortable. Football is in absolutely full swing. You're in the middle of the season at that point for everyone. You're getting taste just a little bit on the tip of your tongue for hockey and for basketball. Um, at least NBA and NHL, you're just getting a little bitty itty bitty getting going. Um, but you're getting that talk, especially in Michigan here, of high school football season starting to wind down already because you're getting into the playoffs in November. So, um, and just you're starting to feel a little holiday vibes, that type of thing. I think October's up there. You're still decently warm during the day for the most part. It's not freezing cold, but I think October's up there. Oh, colors, the colors. Oh, yep, yep, yep. You're just feeding my fire there. Pick two. What do we got? This is where we already start to get into the nuts and bolts because April was way up there for me too, and I think this is where you get your first separation of overall months. I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go December for somewhat similar reasons for me as October, but holiday season, the Christmas season, especially with family and friends. Uh, a lot of times you're back in town for a week or two during the Christmas season, so we love getting together with you during that period of time too. But just the overall vibe of happiness of people everywhere getting ready for Christmas and the holidays and everything else. You got time off from work. Uh, a year or two ago, I started a new tradition we're going to be doing going forward with regular work stuff. Is I take the weekend between Christmas and New Year's off, and I end up having like 7 or 8 working days off between the holidays and then a week off in between. And I love that, just being able to spend time with family and friends and slow way down and not have to worry about work stuff. So just getting together and like the amount of good food that's around too, and you fire up the ovens and everybody's baking everything all the time. Christmas trees are everywhere. The way it's been in Michigan, you get a little bit of snow, which I'm okay with. I hate when snow starts clogging down the roads and everything, but you get that nice little flurry out the window at night or whatever, kind of that snow globe effect. I think that's up there for me. And football, hockey, basketball. You're in Capital One Bowl mania. You're in bowl season, so everything's kind of full tilt. You're in playoff push mode. You're wrapping up the fantasy season too, which is fun. So that's I will put December up there for me next. That's my 2-2. You get eggs. You got the Super Bowl in there. Go Birds. Trying to think if there's anything else in there February wise. Not that I can think of. Weather is crappy, but a lot. We started up a thing a few years ago, where we would travel in February. We would meet up with you. We met up with you a few times and do the travel thing. Yep, yep. Dave and B's, D and B's, wide open. That was so much fun. That was so much fun. But it's a good time to travel too. Get out of wherever you're at, especially up north, and go down south, and it's starting to warm up everywhere. At least down south. So, for me, last pick, underrated pick. I'm gonna go July. July, 4th of July, fireworks. I'm gonna be on. I'm gonna take that back. I hate fireworks now. Living where we live, yeah, cottage getting up north. The weather is super warm all the time. Golf is in full swing. Yep, you're not in the dog days of August. The lake is warming up. You get super long days where you can do everything that you want to get done, hanging out outside. Um, it's just peak summer, especially up in Michigan. You get up in northern Michigan at the cottages and things like that, just hanging out, take a week off. Everything's good. You go find pools, you go do stuff outside. You just the weather doesn't get any better than those 8 to 12 weeks in the middle of summer in Michigan. It's just absolutely peak. You're talking mid 80s, low 90s all the time, and it's just absolutely phenomenal. This is where everybody wants to be that time of year. So I would go July with 3-3. That would be my third pick. So you got September, April, February, and I've got October, December, and July. All right, we'll throw it out there. Make a little graphic to put on the socials and see if we can get some voting going. See what the people say. But see what we can hash out the results next week when we drop another one. But I think that's more or less Yeah, we could see if there's any more pound for pound stuff. See, yeah, get some people spewing some ideas for us. Keep feeding it. So, but I think talk to you guys later. Cheers.